India's macro-fiscal bind. Can cooperative federation be the answer? This is the theme of talk by our chief guest, Dr. Ratan Roy, Director, National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, New Delhi. Sir, may I request you to give your speech now?
Dr. Vidya Yeravdekar, Dr. Rajdi Gupte, Dr. Jyoti Chandramani, Mr. Lalit Katspalia, Symbiosis students, and my former students and interns, there are two here. Very good morning to you. And I would like, as you heard from my CV, I've been a nomad for most of my life. I've lived in 5 different countries across the world, and I've just come home after 24 years last year. I've come back to India off and on, but I've come home permanently after 24 years last year. So one thing I have learnt across my travels is to welcome people in at least 20 languages. So bonjour, bienvenue and ahlan wa sahlan, shubh from what I've been told of the cohort here. I won't say Savadi Khap, and I won't say many other languages, Portuguese, etc. But I think this is already something that I have learnt about Infosys, which I find tremendously inspiring. I spent my life, after a few years in academia, when I realized that I was not going to ever win the Nobel Prize. I've spent 15 years of my life being an economic diplomat. And I have had the privilege of working in the United Nations system on a range of issues to do with economic diplomacy. And the one thing that always troubled me about my country was something that is understandable because it's there in all large countries, something we have in common with the United States, is how inward-looking our country was. And the price that we as a country were paying for being so inward-looking. I used to joke with my friends in the UN that when an Indian would come, they'd say, where would you like to take him for dinner? I'll say, to an Indian restaurant. And they'll say, what? But why would you want to eat Indian food in New York? I'd say, well, we Indians share this with you Italians. You know, Italians don't really like eating anything other than pasta. They'll try your food, but the next morning they want pasta, whether it's Pavarotti or the Italian football team. And I found the Indians were like that. After one day, it had to be dal chawal, which is good. But it also shows a sort of certain lack of engagement with other civilizations, other cultures, which I've been very privileged to have. So what I'd like to bring back to this country is one way of enhancing that engagement, as you were saying in your speech, which at this point has become one of the binding constraints to India's transformation and our ability to take our place in the Committee of Nations. Our economic diplomacy skills, our economic diplomacy capabilities are very thin. We need all of you, or as many of you as are able to serve your country, therefore to consider careers as economic diplomats. And that involves, and that is no longer, by the way, in a $2.5 trillion economy, being an economic diplomat doesn't mean joining the Indian Foreign Service. They have their place and it's important. I'm an economic diplomat, and I have to share with you that yesterday was a very touching personal moment for me. The BRICS Bank was founded, and I have been involved in my time in Brazil and my time in India in the design process for the BRICS Bank. Why have I been asked to do it? I don't work for the government of India, I never have. I was asked to do it because Brazilians know me. I lived there. I have worked with the Chinese from the Anhui district of China to Beijing to Shanghai over the last 15 years of my career. I have worked intimately with many South African colleagues since 1995. I know my developing world. I know, therefore, that when I was posted in Brazil, I went to study in England. The first thing I said was, who was that chap in Oxford who was a Brazil expert? And I picked up the phone to call him, and I said, wait a minute, why am I, an Indian, calling an expert in Oxford about Brazil? Then I realized that there was nobody I could call upon here in the field of economics and public policy, not strategic affairs, not defense and tanks that we have, who I could call upon to educate me about how I should deal with Brazil. And I'm very determined to make this a cornerstone of my life and my coming back, that this will not happen to my country with your generation. Guess how serious the problem is. How many experts on Pakistan do you think we have in India? Not tanks and guns. How many people who think about the Pakistan economy, understand Pakistan trade, understand urban planning in Karachi, anything, the sociology of Pakistan? How many experts? Answer is zero. I kid you not, zero. There is no full-time social science expert in Pakistan, in this country of 1.2 billion people. There is no serious full-time expert on Bangladesh. I'm not talking IR again, I repeat, I'm talking what you guys do in this country. There is no full-time expert on Nepal. There is no full-time expert on Bhutan. There is no full-time expert on Myanmar. This is our neighborhood. And then we need people who wake up in the morning and think about Japan. We need people who wake up in the morning and think about Cote d'Ivoire. You know, we need that sort of broad spectrum expertise, which I assure you the Chinese have. And I assure you, of course, the United States has and other countries have. If we are to take our rightful place in the Committee of Nations, if we are going to be able to approach the world with the capabilities and the strengths that our country does possess, we will need to make this happen. And this is a long project, but I'm willing to commit to it. So I'm so happy and privileged and honored to be at an institution, probably the only institution, that has now for some time, Symbiosis, been at the cutting edge of this endeavor. I cannot tell you with what pleasure when I drove into the campus today, I saw those flags of the Global South out there, because this is not something that I expect in India. It is not something I see in India, and therefore it is very heartening to see it in my home state in the city of Pune. And as Symbiosis reaches out, long may it prosper. I don't think, old or new, you need to worry about the equipment that you receive here. I had the privilege of having, from the youngest school here, the School of Economics, an intern working in my office. I won't embarrass him or her by naming him or her. Most of you probably know who he or she is. And I have people coming from all over India. I have people, in fact, even interning from abroad, from the LSE, from Cambridge. She was so good, that my team said, Dr. Roy, offer her a job now before she goes. Get her, because she's so good, she'll go somewhere else. So, well, I revealed her gender, I won't reveal any more. And we did that. So she has a job the day she finishes here, if she wants it the next morning, or we'll wait 3 months if that is her cause. She's that good. So this is where I think higher education in India needs to be. Excellence, quality, at an affordable cost, practical and outward looking. So with that, I'll end the reason why I think that Symbiosis is such an important institution for the future political life of our country, and move on, if I may, to my presentation, which is going to hopefully not disappoint every economist in this room, because this is geared to making sure that every one of you take away most of it. Whether you're economists, whether you're first year, whether you're computer applications, whatever. Einstein once said that, of experts, that if you can't explain it to a 12-year-old, then you don't understand it yourself. And you're older than 12, so I am not Einstein, but I'll try and explain it at least to you. What I'm discussing, of course, is a very, very important part of the policy challenge that India faces today domestically in the area of public finance, in the area of where and how the government spends its money. That challenge involves a fundamental relook at the political interrelationships between different units of government. It involves looking at how people behave as economic actors in the country. And most important, to address that challenge, it involves thinking outside the box. Before I start, I want to give you an example of a previous commencement lecture I did 4 years ago at Roorkee University, that engineering college. Very smart people, IIT Roorkee. Not commencement, that was the end thing, convocation. About how difficult it is sometimes to think outside the box. I asked them 2 questions. How many of you here are from the northeast of India? How many people here from the northeast? Is there anybody here from the northeast? No? Assam? Ah, okay. Meghalaya, Tripura. Okay. So I said, do you think the northeast of India is remote? Okay. And they said yes. Then I said to them, do you think Bangladesh needs India more than India needs Bangladesh? And they said yes. I said, as engineers, you have just made two statements that are mutually contradictory. Why? Because if you think for 5 minutes or 5 seconds, why is the northeast of India remote? It is not remote because God or our creator made it so. It is remote because there is a political boundary called Bangladesh, which India encircles with the northeast, which cuts off the northeast from the rest of India, except through a chicken neck. And culturally it has become so enforced that when some people in the northeast talk about the rest of India, they say we are going to the Indian mainland. And this cannot be allowed to continue if this country's political integrity is going to survive. So what do we need to make the northeast integrated into India? Obviously we need Bangladesh. So before you start saying that Bangladesh needs India more than India needs Bangladesh and they're bringing in immigrants, heck, do the math, especially the economists. We spend about close on to, at this time, 250,000 crores on so-called subsidies to the northeast. If we gave Bangladesh trade concessions, gave them whatever they wanted, in exchange for our building at our expense 4 superhighways and 4 railway lines from the state of West Bengal to the northeast and within the northeast through Bangladesh, that would cost us 600,000 crores over a 5-year period. It's a fantastic business proposition. And I'm very pleased that our new Prime Minister has recognized this, and our initiative now is to give top priority to making sure that the northeast is no longer remote. Because if the northeast is no longer remote, then the issues, the political issues, the fragmentations that bedevil the northeast at this time, as well as make us insecure in our relations with China, will diminish. The peace dividend is high, the economic dividend is straightforward. That's thinking outside the box. Another example of thinking outside the box is, where should the headquarters of the BRICS Pact be? Chinese were saying China, I was saying, the Indians were saying India, my government, others were saying Brazil, I said Dubai. I won't go on with that story. Figure out why I said Dubai. There's a logical reason in our national interest. That's thinking outside the box. So please, it's a commencement day address. Think outside the box. We have a bad habit in this country of deferring far too much to older people like me. Do not do that. It is bad for you. It is bad for me. It is bad for our country. Challenge me. Challenge us constantly, because we need to develop a culture of thinking outside the box, not saying yes, sir. And if we don't do that, we will never be a fit for purpose $2.3 trillion economy. Can anyone tell me, has anyone heard this phrase cooperative federalism? Anybody? But you have to raise your hand and grab my attention. No? I'm very surprised. That means you've not been following the elections. Because this phrase was used by our Prime Minister. Cooperative federalism. He said that what India needs is a paradigm shift towards cooperative federalism. He didn't tell us what it is. So I intend to persuade him to let me do that. And I'm starting today with you. But if I can't do it simply, then I won't grab the attention of anybody outside the professional community. So this is a test for me as well. If you don't understand it, the Prime Minister is not going to be interested. So I put you in the place of the Prime Minister to judge and test me. Let me start. It's a simple story. Important point in public policy: never tell complicated stories, even if they are complicated. It's your job to make them simple. Otherwise you will lose audience. And the worst thing you can do as a policy guy is lose audience. Okay? When I came to this institute, my institute that I now head, they were writing fantastic research papers. I said, great thing you're doing, but no research paper from NIPFE will come out now without something called a one-pager. I want your policy analysis and recommendations in one page. Go to my website, it's there. Why? Ministers don't have time to read more. And I do not want the bureaucracy mediating my policy advice to the minister, which they will do if you give them 10 pages. That's the bureaucracy's job. And the bureaucracy in India is very good at making sure that the message that they want is the message the minister hears. And they will do it. They're competent, they're trained to do that. So if you want to get around that, do the job yourself. Make it one page and talk to the minister, communicate. Okay, so communication starts. I'm going to talk about government spending, which is at the root of our problem. All of you know government spends money. All of you should know that India has many levels of government, but I'm going to stick with 2. Center and states. I've circulated to you a handout of any technical terms that I will use. Alright? So read them only if you don't understand a technical term. but I don't think I'll be using too many of them. Now what happens in India is that both these levels do two things. They spend money and they get money. How does the government get money? Government gets money in one way that only governments can get money, which belongs in the realm of the police. Surprise you. After our police and army, actually army doesn't use it, hopefully, on our own citizens. The ministry of the state or the center that has uses the maximum of what we call the coercive power of the state, the power of the government to order you to do something, which is only the government has that right, order you, is the Ministry of Finance, because they do something called taxing you. And you have no choice but to pay that tax, and you have no say in how the government will use that tax, in the sense that when you pay 5 rupees for a banana, assuming a banana still costs only 5 rupees, then you expect a banana. But if you pay 5 rupees of income tax or 5 rupees of indirect tax, you don't expect anything back. That is up to the government and the election, once every 5 years, right? And if you don't pay taxes, what happens to you? You go to jail. You go to jail. What else do you go to jail for? Murder, theft, right? And not paying your taxes. So this is a very onerous responsibility upon government. And it's not just a technical matter, tax. It's a political contract between you and your government. So in our country, the contract is that both the center and the states collect taxes. Some taxes are collected by the states and levied by the states and retained by the states. But the majority of taxes in India are shared between the center and the states. All income tax, all excise duty, all customs duty are shared between the center and the states. And our constitution provides for a body called the Finance Commission to share these taxes between the center and the states. They decide the proportion between the center and the states and how much each state will get. Okay, that's on the revenue side. Center and the states can also borrow money. If they need to spend more money than the taxes they get, they have to borrow. I'll come to that. So they can only get money in two ways: borrowing and taxing. All right? The first is just danda. You pay me tax. The second, they have to go to the market and they get an interest rate and all that. But even there are wiggles which I won't tell you about. But you have to, conceptually, all of you, I hope, are clear. These are the only two places the country gets money. Now, both of them also spend money. Essentially, the difference between them is the center is allowed to spend money on everything. There is a list in the constitution: central list, state list, concurrent list. But there's also a provision saying that the center may spend money on anything in the state list if it thinks it's in the national interest. So basically, the center technically is allowed to spend money on anything. And the states are allowed to spend money on many things, which I'll talk about, but not on national public goods. But first I need to know that you understand public goods. Do you understand public goods? Not all of you. Do the IT guys understand public goods? No. It's very simple. It'll take me 1 second. Mr. Roy, are you here? Somebody please switch off the lights. All the lights. Bear with me, this is important because this is, believe it or not, the fastest way I can explain this to you. It never fails. Switch the ball off. Darkness. सब बंद करो. करो. अच्छा बंद किया ना? सब ऑन करो. बस फर्स्ट क्लास ऑन करो. सब. Public good. Why? You and Dr. Chaddiramani both consume this good of lighting at the same time. But your consumption, that is Meenal's consumption, Meenal ma'am's consumption, does not affect Dr. Chaddiramani's consumption. You're not competitive. But if I give Dr. Chaddiramani a banana and she eats it, then Meenal doesn't get a banana. That's not a public good. This is a public good. Okay? Now, The economists amongst you must never let this simple secret out, otherwise you will not get a paycheck. You will say that a public good is non-rival in consumption, all right, and jointness in supply. Don't ever do this, then you will let our secret out. Joint in supply and non-rival in consumption and non-excludable. You're not allowed to do this. This is a secret, trade secret, all right? Okay, so that's a public good. Now, when I say national public good, think about what I've said and think about the following. Think about defense. Does it meet the characteristics of these lights? It is joint in supply. If I supply it to Meenal, I must supply it to me. If I don't supply it to Meenal, I don't get it, right? Non-rival in consumption. Okay, we both consume the same amount of defense, and non-excludable. I can't prevent Meenal from getting defense services where I get them. Foreign affairs, justice, law and order. You know, for the economists, it will interest the IT guys also. These were called in economic theory a long time ago, a lovely phrase in English, lovely phrase, I love it, regrettable necessities. They are regrettable because they come from the bad nature of the human being. If we were all like Mahatma Gandhi, we would not need defense, foreign affairs, because we would just be in love with each other, right? But because we are bad people, what Hobbes called nasty, brutish, short, we need defense, we need foreign affairs, we need dispute and conflict resolution. So general services are about dispute and conflict resolution. That is the centre's primary job in any country, and it is the centre's primary job here, because the government of Maharashtra cannot provide you national public goods. It cannot provide you a national justice system, law and order, foreign affairs, defense. Then you have other public goods which have what we call in economics jurisdictional spillovers. That's very simple. It means that when I build national highways and railways and all that, I have to build them for India. I can't just build them in Maharashtra or Karnataka, right? So these also share these national characteristics. So basically one dividing line conceptually between the centre and the states is the centre must deliver its national public goods and must deliver them properly and must deliver them in full measure. And then they can think about what else they want to do. The states therefore have the responsibility of delivering what we call merit public goods. Merit public goods are things like education, things like health, etc. So where am I? We have two levels of government. You understand now that most taxes, a decision is taken to share them between the centre and the states. You understand that both of them spend money, and you understand where the centre's priority lies. Now we will come into some hardcore public finance. There are two terms in your handout. One is called the fiscal deficit and one is called the revenue deficit. I want you to remember these, if nothing else from my lecture. Because you will read in the newspapers that India has a high fiscal deficit. All right. All of you or most of you, when you leave this place and get your first job and buy your first house and buy your first car, will have a fiscal deficit in your personal life. Because you will be borrowing money to do certain things. This is where we were in terms of the revenue deficit. All right? And this is where we are today. It is the most unheralded achievement because it doesn't make New Delhi look good. So nobody wants to talk about it in New Delhi. But since I'm not from New Delhi, I want to talk about it. And I keep doing it. Only nobody listens to me in New Delhi, so I come to Pune to talk to you. This is a fantastic achievement, and we should celebrate this. Now, I want to make one more point. Remember this. People are, there's a tendency in Delhi, you may not have noticed it, but let me tell you it is there. People sneer at the states. UP, all corrupt people. Oh, Bihar, useless. Oh, Tamil Nadu, she's always giving away Amma meal. These numbers have been achieved despite those handouts. That's very important for you to remember. So, Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu gave free color TVs and maintained fiscal discipline. Okay, Mr. Naveen Patnaik gave 2 rupee rice and maintained fiscal discipline. The Chief Minister of UP gave 1 laptop to every child, or so I am told, and maintained fiscal discipline. Okay, so despite handout behavior which people sneer at in the Planning Commission, the erstwhile Planning Commission, it continues to be the case that the states have maintained fiscal discipline. They didn't make excuses. They survived the economic crisis. That is why it is such an achievement. And the centre gave handouts and did not achieve fiscal discipline. So I'm a simple guy, tell me who's better as a manager. I have a choice, centre or states. And this is a 10-year track record. This is not a 1-year or 2-year blip. 10 years now. Okay, the states as a whole have not been borrowing to consume. But then if you talk to someone from what used to be called the National Advisory Council, this was an unelected body in Delhi that was set up opposite Ten Janpath. They will tell you that, what are you saying? You're anti-people, they told me. Because the center since 2004 has been spending on human development. And I'm from the UN, so I care about human development, health, education, very important things. So I decided to look at this. I said, Baba, okay, you're borrowing to consume. See, because if you're going to spend on human development, you have to pay doctors' salaries, you have to buy injections. This is all borrowing to consume. So they said, then, so okay. I said, good, you're spending on human development. Right, great. But I hope the spending that you're doing as a finance guy is bringing results. And I hope you're doing two things. You're spending money well and you're spending enough to get results. I found neither was true. And the results are quite shocking. Our international friends are going to be very shocked when they see my next two slides about the Republic of India and its spending on human development. This is the total public spending on education. India is somewhere in the middle. Our number is 3.2% of GDP. 3.2% of GDP. Every rupee we earn, we put back 3.2%. Public, state, not symbiosis. State puts in 3.2% back into education. Primary, secondary, tertiary, everything. Look at Nepal. Look at Nepal. Look at, forget Argentina, Brazil, who we should be comparing ourselves with. But look at Nepal. Okay, this is education. Spending, and this is after the government of India is running revenue deficits and increasing public spending, I am told, on human development. All that noise that was made for 10 years. After that, this is what we get. Look at the year. That we spend less than Nepal, which is a much poorer country than India. We spend less than Ethiopia, which is a much poorer country than India. Health. We spend about the same as Bangladesh. We spend much less than Nepal. Forget Turkey, forget South Africa, forget Argentina, forget Brazil, forget other emerging economies who are in the G20 like us. So we spend too little on education and health. And this is where the central government's focus has been, this and rural development. And what we spend, this sadly you will know the day you enter any ministry in New Delhi. We spend terribly badly, terribly, shamefully badly. I mean, I'm not even a full-time civil servant, I feel ashamed being associated with public money at how callously and badly we spend money, and no one feels morally responsible within government, in center, for this appalling ineptitude in public spending. And the way I describe this to you is, central government used to have something called the 11th plan. They have a 12th plan now, I'm told. This 11th plan, what they do is, they put some targets of improvement, and then they ask for money. And then the government gives them money. And then we see how it has been spent. So saying the target is too high is not enough, because whatever the target is, on that basis I provide you funds. Okay. So if you don't achieve the target, then it means my funds have not been spent efficiently. These are the results of the 11th plan. You take anything that the central government is responsible for, anything. GDP growth, agriculture, not just human development, employment generation, look at the numbers. Unemployment reduction, literacy rate, gender gap, lower is better. Gender gap should be 0. So, yeah, so if we wanted to bring it to 10, it's still 16. Infant mortality rate, lower is better. Less babies die. People should, it's a kind of infant mortality rate desensitizes you when you say that. That figure means out of 1,000 babies born in India, 28, we don't want more than 28 to die. Today 44 die every year, to every 1,000 babies born. We didn't achieve that. Sex ratio, not achieved. Infrastructure, 88% achieved. Infrastructure 2, not achieved. Okay, so I'm giving you lots of targets. There's one target we achieved in that list. It's called forest cover. That's the only target that doesn't require you to spend any money. All you have to do is not cut trees. So the only target that the 11th 5-year plan achieved was the one target that did not involve spending money. What does that tell you about the fiscal aptitude of the central government and the central bureaucracy? I know what it tells me. So, to cut a long story short, and this makes the Prime Minister very angry, I know, and rightly so. He has inherited a situation where the central government is consuming, it is not investing. Already told you that, revenue deficit, right? And it's in a mess. What to do? This is how you feel. That little fellow there, this is how I feel every morning. Okay. If that is not enough, we have one more problem, which you should know, because that problem, you have to leave Delhi and take one of the 68% of our flights that flies between two cities in India, Delhi and Bombay. You know that? 68% of all aircraft in India, all flights in India are between Delhi and Bombay. That's called inclusive spread out growth, but anyway. So, come to RBI. One thing you will hear, or you should know if you haven't, is that Indians are very thrifty people. हम लोग पैसे बचाते हैं, चाइनीज भी बचाते हैं वैसे, हाँ? वियतनामीज भी बचाते हैं, लेकिन इनके सिवाय कोई ज़्यादा नहीं बचाते, हम लोग बहुत पैसे बचाते हैं. And I have some graphs, I want to bring them. Last count, we saved as a country 30% of our income. 30%. Awesome. China is 50, but that's okay. China will always come first, don't worry. 30% of our income. That's good. Huh? Now, who will save in an economy? The economists know this, just for them. There are three kinds of groups you always look at in an economy. Households, firms, and government. Right? Now, hopefully by now you have understood government is not saving. In fact, it is borrowing your savings to consume. Okay? As a whole. Firms in India save, but a small amount. Why? Because a firm is there to do business. And to do business, what money it has, it puts back into business, then it takes your money, gives you a return and puts it into business, right? So traditionally in any society, corporate saving is relatively small. It's retained profits basically for another day and all that. So mainly saving is done by households. So of this 30%, about 24% of the saving is household saving in India, which is very high. In a poor country to save 1/4 of your income, it's wonderful. Now, problem in India, which is unique to India, South Asia, is households save a lot of money, but briefly put, the money we save, we don't put in the bank. That is called in jargon for the SSC people here, physical saving. Don't say we don't put in the bank, people will not give you a job. Physical saving. Problem in India is stickiness in physical saving. That is how you say it technically, okay? There's physical saving and financial saving. Financial saving, in brief, is the money that goes through a bank. You save money, you put it in your bank. Physical saving is you save money and don't put it in the bank. What do? You directly go and put it down for a down payment for a house. You buy gold, you buy diamonds, etc. That is called physical saving. Now, physical saving, if you take household saving, I said it was 30% of GDP, right? Physical saving is 17% of GDP. Financial saving is 13% of GDP. So actually, while it looks like we are saving a lot, more than half of that money is not available to the organized private sector, because it goes straight to it doesn't go to a bank. And if your money doesn't go into a bank, it is not available to the corporate sector. You understand that, no? How does the corporate sector borrow? You want them to go to a Hawala operator. That's what happens in the end. Okay, they have to go to a bank. So they go to the bank, but what we thought sitting in Delhi, we have so much saving and the corporate sector can take it, the corporate sector doesn't have that money. It gets worse. So 13% of GDP is going into financial saving. Corporates are still saving about 18%. But the great government of India is borrowing from you. And under rules, they have first claim over your money. Because something called SLR, which I can explain later, but economic students should know. It's very simple. So, by the rule, first the government will borrow, then everybody else. Aapka queue mein dusra number hai. ठीक है? So that SLR means that, what did I say the fiscal deficit is? If you take the center and the states combined, it's approximately 6%. So 13 financial plus, now IT guys I expect you to do maths with me faster. So this I'm not going to give any quarter on. So 13 financial plus about 5 corporate kar do, 18 minus 6 revenue deficit gives you about 12% that is sitting in a bank for the corporate sector to borrow. You want 8% growth with 12% investment by the private sector. Public sector is not doing any growth. They are only doing revenue and human development, right? And not doing it also. So there's no growth happening there because they're not doing it, I showed you. So you have 12% money and you want the private sector to deliver you 8% growth. What is the rate of return? 75%. Not even a casino will give you that rate of return. Okay? That's our problem. Now, if the government was running a fiscal deficit, which was not a revenue deficit, borrowing to invest, then the numbers would look very different. Then you would have the 17% household savings, let's say 3% fiscal deficit, all invested. So 3% my investment area, 17% going to corporates, 20% investment by corporates, available for corporates. You can start thinking about 7-8% growth. The math is very simple. But there's another problem. In our country, we do lambi kahanis. Our movies are 3 hours long, so don't expect economics presentation to just deal with one theme. ये बिल्कुल हिंदी मूवी जैसे है. तीसरी समस्या है. If you can't borrow from banks, what will companies do? They will go abroad to borrow. It's called FII. Heard it, no? Foreign Institutional Investment. It will give you a lot of back office work, I know. But if you borrow from foreigners, your current account deficit goes up. That is, you will be borrowing foreign money and therefore you will owe foreigners more and more as time goes on. And the last time we did that, we had a crisis which can affect your national sovereignty in 1991. You were all born then, but too young to remember the crisis, I'm sure. Well, most of you. But it was very bad times. It was very, very bad times. It was so bad that when I suggested to Mr. Chidambaram back in 2005 at a seminar that perhaps India was accumulating too much reserve, foreign exchange reserve, he looked at me and said, young man, where were you in 1991? I said, मैं तो college में था. So then he said, I have had the IMF sitting in my office and dictating to me, I don't care how many reserves we accumulate, I will never let our country go down on its knees like that. So be careful with this current account deficit, because the inevitable consequence of aspiring for 8% growth with that level of saving, with the government borrowing to consume, is your current account deficit will go up, as it has. Just look at that red line, how seriously our current account deficit has tanked since 2004-05. I rest my case. That's the problem. So where are we going to look for solutions? Pity the poor Prime Minister. Okay, he won an election and now he has to deal with this. Majority mandate, no excuses. First thing, not just him, but these 3 guys have to do is to get people to save and deposit in banks. And this is where you come in. I have been examining for the last 6 months the research done on why we have such high levels of physical savings in India, internationally or domestic research. I have found about 40 papers, including by the RBI, and I have told the governor this, the deputy governor, on how it is measured. But no one is telling me why we are doing this. I have a lot of pawn shop anecdotes. I can sit in the, coffee shop of the Delhi Gymkhana and a lot of people will give me gyan, expert advice on why. But analytical research, evidence-based analysis of why this problem exists, of physical saving, zero. So you'll be doing your country a great service if you think about this problem from your commencement onwards, because we don't have a solution. We have clues to it, but we don't know why. All right? So we need to reduce the volume of physical saving. That involves 3 of these characters who are responsible for steering the ship of our economy. It involves, of course, the Prime Minister, it involves the Finance Minister of India, and it involves the Governor of the Central Bank. So this is to give you a flavor of the kind of problem that they are grappling with, to which my professional community has not provided any answers, and therefore, as you join my community, I implore you that this is a red line problem for India, think about it. Second is a proposal I have. Who are these people? You know the top left, I hope. Who is the guy on the right? Nitish Kumar. Who is the lady downstairs? Madam Jayalalitha. Who is the guy there? Naveen Patnaik. Why have they put them all with the Prime Minister? Cooperative federalism. If what I have said is true, then the time has come for the centre to seriously think about giving up the responsibility for investing in human development to fiscal entities that are able to do it, well or badly, I don't care, but not bankrupt the country. And my impression is that the idea of cooperative federalism, the idea behind winding up the Planning Commission, the idea behind making the National Development Council, which is the meeting of all chief ministers of India, take greater responsibility for the affairs of state is the idea the Prime Minister has behind the notion of cooperative federalism. We have a Finance Commission sitting now, the 14th Finance Commission. It will submit its report by the 31st of October, or as normally happens, they will ask for a 2-month extension and give it by 31st of December. My commission did the same thing. But that's okay. They have to do it, unfortunately, by 31st December constitutionally. So the time has come, I think, for that commission to consider what I call a budget neutral change. At the moment, the Indian Planning Commission, through the Indian Planning Commission, whether through state plan or central plan, doesn't matter, through the Indian Planning Commission, from the central budget, we spend approximately 2 lakh crores on human development expenditure, by which I mean employment guarantee, health, education, water and sanitation. Central scheme, everyone has to adapt. And what are called in government utilization certificate, which is Safai, has to be given all the way up to Yojna Bhavan from the states. Okay? Safai. Everything has to be Safai to the states. Every state. Rich, poor, well, bad. Give it up. Take that 2 lakh crores of what is called planned revenue expenditure. Take 80% of it. You still have to worry about the Northeast. And give it to the states. How do you give it to the states? You stop spending and you increase the state's share, combined share of tax revenue by exactly that amount. And say, now you decide in your states how you want to improve education. My feeling is that each of them will have a different solution. I couldn't find a picture of the current Chief Minister of Maharashtra. He must be a very camera shy person. I mean, with Mr. Modi, I didn't find it. Oh, I know. Okay. But I found this picture, so I'm putting him there as Maharashtra. Okay. So, Maharashtra may decide that we are a fairly advanced state. Our problem is to focus on primary education in Marathwada and to revive University of Mumbai. They may not want to go for a Sarva Siksha Abhiyan where everybody does dice and teacher training for 5 days here and there. They may have a different solution, right? Orissa might say that my problem is tribal children. What I need to do is solve the problem of how tribal children live in low density population areas can be educated well, for which they may have to create central facilities with hostels of good quality and arrangements for parents to visit their children, so transport. There will be a completely different education plan. Jayalalitha, her government and the previous one have done fantastically on education, the best performing state on primary education. But tertiary education is a mess in Tamil Nadu. So she may say, okay, I've done my primary education, I'm going to use these extra resources to revive tertiary education and not just medical and engineering. Actually revive some social science, some accountancy in Tamil Nadu. And Mr. Nitish Kumar might decide that his problem is a gender problem, and other than a very successful scheme he ran of giving cycles to girl children, he might decide I want to invest more in the girl child. Each of them may take a different decision. Let them. Why am I saying let them? I'm saying it as a finance ministry person, because they have proven to the Indian public that for the last 10 years they have not borrowed to consume despite giving handouts. In other words, I'm saying they have managed their political equations. Otherwise, what do people do? Blame it on the politics. Oh, हम तो politics में है, compulsions है, India तो ऐसे ही है, system ऐसे चलता है. System तो उनके लिए भी चलता है. But they have been running a revenue surplus for the last 10 years by giving color TVs. Amma canteen, you will hear lots of people saying 1 rupee idlis. What is all this? She gives 1 rupee idlis. Good. What do I care? She's running a fiscal surplus. It's her state. Same thing with here. You want to build a Shivaji statue? Go. It's a revenue surplus. You decide what statues you want to build, or Buddha statue. You do it. And then you can talk to your electorate and they will punish you or reward you accordingly. So what I'm saying in essence, and to begin concluding, it will take me 3 minutes. I see I have 6 minutes. Is the following. That I began by talking to you about India's international obligations, to which I'll come back. But at the domestic level also, there is a bit of history you need to understand and share. That this, what I call ice cream cone, that we call India, you must remember that this entity is a new entity as a nation state. Very new. And that is not abnormal in human history. As a nation state, I'm not talking about a civilization. There you may wish to argue that it's a 1,000-year-old or 10, I don't care. My argument is confined to nation state now. In its present form, with its present constitution, this country is 64 years old. Our constitution was inaugurated on the 26th of January 1950. That's a very young country. And that is normal. reflect for a minute, step back. How many countries in the world since the year 1900 have not changed their boundaries? You won't find many. You can eliminate all of Europe because of the Second World War and the First World War. Eliminate all of the former Soviet Union. Eliminate Japan. Eliminate Korea. Eliminate Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Indonesia. East Timor just went. Eliminate after 1940. Trick question, not so trick. After 1950, has India's borders remained the same? No. Why? What? No, China was nothing happened. They gave us back the land. Some land went here, there. I'm not talking about little bits of land. Anybody else? No. We added a new state in 1975. Why do you guys, nobody remembers this. We added a state called Sikkim. Brand new state. It will be independent country. It's the last known instance of the annexation of a state by any power in the world. And you should remember all this because you shouldn't get wrong-footed when somebody suddenly brings it up in the UN. There's an answer for it, but that comes later. But remember it. Don't wish it away. All right. We added Sikkim. Remember? It wasn't part of India till 1975. After I was born, we added Sikkim. So borders change. So every country in the world is engaged. And this is important if you're going to be economic diplomats to understand, with the idea of creating the idea of a nation state. And this is as much to do with economics, with technology as it has to do with politics and IR. It's a mistake to think it's just politics and IR. Jawaharlal Nehru, our first Prime Minister, never called India. It'll surprise you, can go and check. He never used the phrase the Indian nation. Till the day he died, he always spoke of India as a nation in the making. In your terms, it's a project. Has it been a successful project? I think so. It is quite creditable that a large, diverse, fractious, socially divided country that has embraced democracy, however imperfectly, has managed to grow in economic strength, in social cohesion, over 64 years. There's a lot to do, yes. But that has come at a price. And the price we paid for that has been manifold. We had to secure ourselves as a nation in 1950 or 1960, which meant we had to adopt a certain path which you might now say was unjustified from a pure economics perspective. The path of making sure that the country was seen to be working as one unit. And that is why we created things like the Planning Commission. That is why we created things like plans. That is why the central government began to occupy a disproportionate influence in the shaping of our nation. And I think that was a good thing for that time because it helped us fight 3 wars successfully. It helped us build the idea of an India where everyone was free to live and work where they liked successfully. In short, ladies and gentlemen, we did something that the continent of Europe has not been able to do to this day. I always tell my friends in the European Union, come and take technical assistance from us on how to run a European Union. We are a very successful union of different streams, and that is something we must protect. But I think moving on to your generation, the time has come for us now to think outside the box, inside our country, and say that I think we can be more secure now in our federalism than we were allowed to be 50 years ago. We have together weathered enough challenges. We have seen off the fast bowlers. Our middle order hasn't collapsed, right? India is taken seriously as a democracy that is enduring and here to stay. No one talks about this country breaking up anymore, but as our first Prime Minister reminded us, we have to keep working on it. Whether it is on secularism, whether it is on economic integration and equality of opportunity. But working on it also means that we have to find ways in which we can address all these challenges without bankrupting the country. And I think the Prime Minister's fear, and I think I share it, is that this country therefore needs a change in the terms on which government is organized. And that has many dimensions. One dimension, which I did not mention here, is we must learn to spend our money better. And that is why the government has appointed an Expenditure Management Commission. This is something which is very frightening because we have never managed to do it before. We have always spent our money badly and now we are spending it even more badly. We have never had accountability in our civil service. We have never had accountability for results. We have tried and we have failed. But that should not dishearten you because By anecdote, I'll tell you, when we had the Mahatma Gandhi, when Narega was announced, I was in New York. I was working in New York. And the first results came in. I was very happy. So somebody said, why are you so happy with an unemployment program when there are issues with Narega? Why should a country growing at 8% need a Narega? That's a separate issue. But it was working. People were getting employed and, it was working. So I said to this friend of mine who was actually happened to be Brazilian, that, Rodrigo, I have never seen any government program work in my life. And I'm now 39 years old. So I'm so happy that at the age of 39 I've seen one national program that is delivering results. That's all I wanted, to see some results. Now you guys have got used to it because we've had programs that have been working well for the last 10 years. But from my vantage, this was a new thing. So we need to make more things work and we need to make them work better. So failure over the last 40 years is no reason to assume that success will either take time or is not within your reach. Okay? That is not the lesson that India has taught us. We can click. Alright? We won the World Cup twice. If you ask me when I was a kid whether we'll ever win the World Cup in India, we didn't have a fast bowler. So, and that came very fast. These transformations, when they happen in symphonic moments. They happen beautifully. They can happen in 5 years of your life, even in 3. Okay? But we have to work to make them happen and we have to acknowledge that this work is probabilistic in its nature. It may succeed, it may fail, but you must retry and recharge. All of you know that in your personal lives, that is a very important dictum. The transformations happen in a second. You pass a competitive exam. You get into symbiosis. Your life changes in a moment. Right? The same is true of a country. So what I've done therefore today is give you some challenges in my area of work, which is public finance. These are complex national challenges. And these challenges are the subtext of things like budget speeches, things like manifestos, things like vision documents that come out of different places. I've tried to argue to you that we have one challenge we know nothing about, which is very serious and we need to start working on it in the context of our macroeconomic problems. And we have one challenge for which I think we have a solution, and that solution lies within us, but it requires renegotiation of our political federal economic structure. And we have a third challenge of economic diplomacy, which is something that we need to solve by getting more people to look outward. I cannot think of a better platform of challenges for you to commence your commencement with. Because these challenges, if you solve them, will transform your lives. And as an older generation, give to me because they'll certainly transform mine. But the keys to that transformation and the ability to make it happen in real time lie with you and what you make of your learning here and how you apply it in the national interest abroad. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for a very interesting and inspiringly instigating interaction. Now we do understand what cooperative federalism is. Moreover, we know what is our probable role in the same. More so, we know what to make our government do. And listening to you in the form and body of Mr. Narendra Modi, as you had asked us to do, I have understood the agenda for my government very well. Thank you so much, sir. My country is in safe hands with diplomats like you. And now, may I request and call upon Mr. Lalit Katpalia, Director SICSR, to offer a vote of thanks.
Can you hear me at the back? So technology works, I presume, because we technology guys are famous for making technology not working when we need them. Morning friends, actually a good afternoon. After such an interesting discussion on cooperative federalism, I think achhe din aa rahe hain. So I just in fact wanted to say that after hearing this, I thought of slightly changing this, what I wanted to say. I know it's a vote of thanks, and I read an interesting quote yesterday which said, "You are the sky, everything else is weather." The other thing which I want to say here is that I was in a conference and was in a conference with some of the leading technology guys from Capgemini, Accenture. And this was a technology conference on business analysts, and we were talking about how banks are becoming technology companies and technology companies are becoming banks. The analogy here is that banks have more technology than technology companies, and technology companies have more money than banks. So interesting. Secondly, it's coincidental. I don't know how many of you know this. Yesterday was an epoch-making event, just as cooperative federalism is. Anyone from the technology guys wants to tell me the latest news on what happened yesterday? Well, if you don't have the answer, I want to tell you, IBM and Apple are joining hands. Yes, IBM and Apple are joining hands. Yeah, we don't have cooperative federalism, but Apple felt the need that to get their iOS operating system and other stuff jumping around, they need the help of IBM. Next step, let's see what Google does. We already had the Androids and stuff like that. So that's interesting news, and let's see what happens in the future. So friends, I know this might sound a bit weird, but I would first like to thank the rain gods. Because we need rain in Pune, and if we don't get rain in Pune, we're going to be in bad shape. And I also want to request the rain gods to ensure that they rain every year and probably come in early before the new undergraduate and postgraduate batch comes in, so that we have water sufficient around. Do you guys agree or no? Yes. And also save water. Thank you. As a tradition, the first person I would like to thank is our chief guest, Dr. Ratin Roy. And sir, it has been a pleasure to have you over here for a commencement address. You are a role model, a mentor to all of us in the Symbiosis family. And we in Symbiosis have a special place in our hearts for your contributions to Symbiosis. I would also request you to take interns from SICSR, and you won't regret them. Interestingly, I want to share with Dr. Ratin Roy that we are economic ambassadors. Frankly speaking, Mahatma Gandhi started the Quit India movement, and the offshoring industry followed Mahatma Gandhi to the rule, and we send our engineers offshore. A lot of our technology guys go on site, bring money, and also send money to reduce the CAD, which you talked about. And I also want to tell you that we also help in the contribution of the nation. Interestingly, when the first rupee symbol came, we didn't have our own symbol. We used RS as the symbol, and we had that alphabet, the R word and common. There was not a single line of code available from any authority, government or private sector, to display that code on a website. And I have the pleasure to share with you that the day the symbol was launched, 2 days after that, one of my undergraduate students, Aman Jain, displayed or put a line of code which you could freely download from his website called as webrupee.com. That site still exists. There were 7 crore downloads of that particular code. He didn't charge a single piece of money. If he would have charged even 1 rupee, he would have earned 7 crore rupees. And shockingly, the people who actually downloaded this code were people from IBM, Infosys, TCS, and in fact the government departments also. So yes, we played a very major role in giving technology. And I also want to tell you, sir, that we request you as a part of BRICS to give us the IT work. We worked on the common euro currency, we worked on the Basel Accord, and we would be keen to develop software for the BRICS banks. And we also want to request you that 70% of our revenues come from the North Americas and stuff like that. BRICS is another market which we look forward to. Thank you very much. The next person I would like to thank is our Principal Director of Symbiosis, Dr. Vidya, for being part of our induction program, thus ensuring that we have the commitment and backing of the entire Symbiosis Society for each of our institutions. I would also like to thank Dr. Rajni Gupte, Vice Chancellor, Symbiosis International University, for being part of our induction program, commencement program, and guiding the new entrants at SICSR, SSE, both Symbiosis University constituents at the start of their academic career. This is a privilege, guys. In not so many universities, in fact, I would say proudly that we are one of the first universities who have such eminent and great people coming here and talking to you about the good things, and the backing of the most senior officers both from the society and the university coming here. I think this induction program shows that we are all very serious about our students, and we have all the top people here. I would also like to thank Dr. Jyoti Chandiramani, Director SSE, for all her contributions to make the Common Commencement Program Day a grand event, and also for getting the chief guest over here. It's due to her that we have him here. I would like to thank all the directors who are present here from various Symbiosis Institute for coming to our Common Commencement Program. Thanks to all the faculty and non-teaching staff of the Symbiosis Schools of Economics and SICSR for their contributions to today's event. Finally, I would like to thank the most special people who are close to our heart. Any guesses? Yes, the students of Symbiosis, because at Symbiosis, everything we do is for students, by students, of students. Lastly, welcome to Symbiosis and best of luck for your career and life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. May I request you to please stand up for the national anthem? Thank you so much. Dignitaries, guests, faculty, staff are requested to move towards the cafeteria to join us for lunch. Students may kindly leave the auditorium. Thank you so much.